Hi everyone, I'm Damien.
Hi everyone, I'm Bob Cruz here with my friend the T-Rex. Thanks so much for joining us, and I hope everybody is staying safe.
Yes, as Bob just said, thank you so much again for joining us today for today's webinar, Putting Excellence in Your Testing Center of Excellence. All of us at Checkpoint Technologies hope you're well and staying safe. I'm sure you'll find today's webinar very informative. At this point now, we're going to go ahead and turn off our webcam so you can get the benefit of the full size slides. As mentioned before, my name is Damian Von Frank, and I'm the marketing specialist here at Checkpoint Technologies, and will be moderating today's webinar. With me today is our presenter, Bob Cruz, CEO and co-founder of Checkpoint Technologies, who has over 31 years of experience in IT.
Hey everyone. So I've been in IT for 31 years, actually started my career off in the 80s as a COBOL DB2 programmer. And then after about 10 years of programming in COBOL and C#, and all that good stuff, I developed a real passion for quality assurance and software testing. I do a lot of presenting actually throughout the world at conferences on risk analysis, effective use of test automation, and strategic test planning, as well as team development. So again, thank you so much for joining us, and we do love questions.
Speaking of questions, here we go. So as you can see here is an image of the GoToWebinar control panel that usually appears in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Throughout the presentation, we encourage you to ask questions. To submit a question, to make sure the questions panel is expanded, and type your question and simply click send. We're going to do our best to answer all questions today, but in case we miss anything, we will make sure to email all our questions and answers to everyone who registered for the webinar by the end of the next week. And by the way, today's webinar is also being recorded. To receive a copy of the webinar, just shoot us an email. So let's get started with the presentations. Take it away, Bob.
Hey everybody, so during today's webinar, we're going to be talking about traditional versus centralized models. I'm going to provide a testing center of excellence overview, and then we're really going to dive into a process, a 5-step process to build a testing center of excellence. And then the other area that we're really going to focus on is the importance of an assessment in doing this. So when it comes to a traditional silo model, one of the things to think about is how we all have separate project or testing teams. So many organizations do. So rather than being focused on the enterprise, they're focused on their specific project. So therefore, you don't have any resources entirely with emphasis on the organization. And that makes it very difficult to ensure consistent quality because you have different management teams. Each team is focused on a particular business unit or project, and each organization or each business unit might have different tools, different standards, different best practices, as well as varying budgets. So these are just some of the things, some of the gotchas, if you will, with the traditional silo model. Now, it's not, all sunshine and unicorns, because with the decentralized testing, you can have some overwhelming demands. I've consulted for about 260 different organizations, and one of the challenges they'll have when they have a decentralized testing model is that when they want to start utilizing new technology, there may be some projects or some business units that will resist that, or they may resist changing market trends. A perfect example of that is how many of us know organizations where some of their business units, some of their project teams when it comes to testing are agile, others are waterfall. Then others might say, well, we're agile-ish, somewhere in the middle, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And as a result, you end up getting inadequate application quality, or perhaps even high production cost, or delays in delivery schedules. Because perhaps with one project, they may end up having to rely upon another project being finished successfully so with testing and validating whatever application or whatever system it is they're testing. And then also as a result, you have a lack of quality standards. So by standards, I mean it's the same throughout. And then there are other challenges that this could cause, obviously. If you have a lack of quality standards, then it makes it much more difficult to share resources among groups. So let's talk about a testing center of excellence for a moment. So when you think of a testing center of excellence, it is a framework comprising strategic assets. So process, people, technologies, and it governs how the testing organization engages and delivers testing services to the larger enterprise. So governs, in other words, it manages, it monitors, it sets policies, it sets standards. And then you end up developing, you have established goals, you have well-defined processes and a governance mechanism. Also, as a result, your resources end up having multidisciplined skill sets. And this is a true benefit to the organization as well as to quality. And it also makes it much easier for the organization to agree upon common tools and technologies. Now, you can't always do that because naturally, there are often situations where one project might be utilizing a tool that others are not using because of the technologies of that system. But you can still set and define best practices and standards throughout. So the benefits of a testing center of excellence, it is much, much easier for the team to evolve existing testing services, so more agile. So in other words, each group, it makes it much easier for them to improve and scale up and perhaps even enhance the testing services that they're providing. It also allows them to offer those new services with a higher degree of quality. It also promotes a culture of quality. So it's found that when an organization has a testing center of excellence, that a culture of quality helps everybody feel ownership, some real passion for quality. The team starts holding themselves accountable, which is a great thing. Also, shorter time to market. Think about today and how important a shorter time to market is for so many organizations to be competitive. It also provides decreased and optimized cost in regard to quality, enhanced delivery confidence, so the end users, the customers, are feeling more confident about what they're getting, and then those delivering it are feeling much better about what they're delivering. So you end up having a much tighter alignment with the business throughout the entire organization. I mean, some of the incredible benefits, according to a survey by Infosys in late 2018, is when it comes to reduction in time to market, 67% noticed a reduction of 5 to 10%. 11% of those surveyed noticed a reduction in time to market by 11 to 15%. 11% of those surveyed a reduction of 16% to 20%, and 11% noticed greater than a 20% reduction in time to market. So that's amazing. Then when it comes to the decrease in cost of quality assurance, Infosys in their survey found that 43% of the organizations saw a decrease in cost of less than 10%. 50% decreased cost by 11 to 20%, and 7% decreased cost 21 to 30%. And then the last metric I wanted to share with you on this is when it comes to quality improvement achieved through a testing center of excellence, 23% saw an improvement of 5 to 10%, 38% of 11 to 15%, 23% of those surveyed 16 to 20%, and 15% saw quality improvement achieved greater than 20%. And
Wow,
this
Bob.
was, oh, go ahead. What was that,
I was
Damien?
gonna say, wow, Bob, those numbers are absolutely staggering. You said
It-
that costs were often decrease and optimize, and someone asked in the chat, how is that?
Great question. So the cost often get decreased and optimized through better defect prevention. So there are less defects making their way into production. As I'm sure everybody knows in the audience, that the sooner you identify a defect, the less it costs to fix it. So therefore, once a defect makes its way into production, you've got to start looking at not only the cost associated with the rework to resolve that defect, but also possibly the cost due to failure if that defect was discovered in production. Also, knowledge management increases, and then shared resources. I mentioned earlier that that's one of the benefits when you can standardize. It's easier to share resources throughout the organization among the different testing teams. So great question on that.
Yes, thank you.
Sure. So now some of the implementation challenges when it comes to a testing center of excellence. You know, out of the numerous organizations that I've provided assessments for, I would say obtaining organizational commitment, so buy-in from leadership, tends to be the most difficult, because it often is a challenge to see the vision and look further down the road, because so many organizations and the leaders are focused on what's happening today. Also, agreeing upon and setting the direction and priority, and then the provision of skills and knowledge. So that third one, provision of skills and knowledge, is very true today. Now, well, let me take that back. It might not be true this exact day, because our employment rate has skyrocketed because of, unfortunately, the situation that we're in. But when the unemployment rate is extremely low, I know all organizations can relate to the challenges to find the skills and knowledge that you need. Also, lack of sufficient information. Communicate, communicate, communicate. You cannot over communicate. It is very important to let the organization, the team, know what the objective is, know what the goals are. Management of existing demands. I have no doubt there is nobody in the audience that thinks for a moment an organization is going to say, hey, everybody, time out. We're going to stop everything we need to do for the next few weeks so that we can implement this testing center of excellence. No, the lights must remain on. You know, you've got to still perform and provide the day-to-day operations. And then lack of attention during end-to-end duration. Oftentimes, organizations will start up with just a full head of steam to implement a testing center of excellence. And then that steam starts to die out, and they start to lose some of the motivation and the attention. So these are some things that you truly need to be careful about when implementing a testing center of excellence. So the 5 steps to build a testing center of excellence. So, and this is from the bottom up. The first thing you want to do is a survey, then a detailed assessment, design and build the testing center of excellence. Step 4, start with pilot projects. Step 5, the last step, is adopt. And I'm going to be going through each of these in greater detail. So when it comes to conducting a survey, we're talking about a self-assessment there. So you're asking stakeholders, whomever you identify, can be customers, technologists, leadership, testers, to do a self-assessment. Identify how well everybody understands how the organization is ensuring quality today. Focus on people, processes, and technology. Clarify and solidify objectives. What does everybody believe the objectives are in regard to quality? Identify all of the stakeholders that will benefit from and be involved with a testing center of excellence. Identify the budget, money, time, and effort. And then you have got to be sure, to get commitment and buy-in. And I'm going to pause for just a moment here to give everybody a chance to get some questions. And then I want to make sure that everybody can still see my screen. Okay, it looks like my screen may have frozen, everybody, so bear with me 1 second here. I'm going to get this fixed. Very sorry about that. So this lets you know that this is not pre-recorded, although we are recording it. And I'm going to get here. There we go. So if somebody could let me know on the question if you can see it. Give me a thumbs up. All right, there we go. I got 1 thumbs up. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And by the way, if I give any of you a corny joke, then it really makes me feel good if you do a haha or an LOL in the question panel. It just reaffirms that I'm not as goofy as my grandkids think I am. So again, when it comes to conducting a survey, I'm not going to read everything again, but here's what you want to do. And also a common question we get asked a lot is that you want to be sure to just do the survey and set the expectations. But by the way, we will be, if you email us and our contact information is at the end, I will be more than happy to send you a copy of these slides in PDF format. So, some of the primary reasons that organizations will implement a testing center of excellence are these primary 3 reasons. So 25% want to have single accountability for quality assurance and drive down IT cost. I know we can all relate to that. 38% want to raise the effectiveness and efficiency of QA. And then 38%, their primary reason is because they have the need to support large business or technology transformation initiatives. Of these 3, all of them by far are the 3 most common reasons according to an Infosys survey. So second step is perform the assessment. And I'm going to actually provide a template and go through a template when it comes to performing an assessment. So by assessment, I'm talking about an analytical process performed to better understand where you are, where you want to get to, and how to get there. So it's focused on people, processes, data, environment, solutions, challenges, and objectives. Notice the last bullet. It can be tailored. It can absolutely be tailored. So, some organizations might say, well, you know what, we want to really focus on the skill set of our team. You can absolutely do that. The most common thing is organizations, might want to focus on their processes to see if they're effective and they're realizing the best ROI. So these can absolutely be tailored and customize. And the reason I'm sharing this information is that I'm trying to enable everybody. I really like in our webinars when we can give you something of value. So all of this information in the template I'm going to share is so that if you want to use the template to do your own internal assessment. Step 3, design and build the testing center of excellence. Make sure you establish automated business processes. Step in bullet number 2, put in place a leadership structure. So there's got to be a team, an executive sponsor, a steering committee, some IT and business subject matter experts, and some champions and mentors. And be sure to define processes for continuous improvement. So go over the lessons learned and the best practices. You know, it's one of the things I honestly feel has helped me in my IT career and business career is I'm one of those people that I love making a mistake the first time. I only get frustrated when I've made a mistake a second or third time because that means I did not learn the first time. So it's very important for continuous improvement to do a lessons learned. Start with a pilot project, step number 4. It can certainly be more than one. I'd recommend 3 because you don't want to be overwhelmed. So what I might recommend is choose a small and maybe 2 mid-level projects. Don't choose one project that is overly complex. Prove and succeed at work. So do the whole plan, do, check, act. Remember the check part. Do the lessons learned. What worked, what did not work. Prioritize the projects. So, you know, determine with your projects, once you're ready to adopt, which ones are going to be first and so on. And then enforce adherence. Have a way to check that it is being adhered to. Communicate the capabilities. Measure and track results. Identify and discuss lessons learned and share wins. So you'll notice that 5 of these 6 bullets are involving communication learning. You've got to share with the organization the benefits. So now I'm going to focus on assessments. Now 60 to 70% of the time is spent on steps 1 and 2. So you can think of 1 and 2, if you will, as planning. So I'm sure you've all heard that, you know, typically 2/3 or even more time to 75% is spent just on planning, and it truly pays off. The benefits of doing an assessment, it enables you to proactively identify considerations, challenges, and issues. So you can think about how you're going to be addressing these ahead of time. You can identify the opportunities for immediate improvement. That's one of the great things, you know, with these assessments. It's always good to gauge and identify the level of effort to implement the improvement or the fix or the change and what the benefits will be. And then you can identify those low cost but huge impact opportunities for immediate improvement and focus on those right away, even perhaps before you implement the testing center of excellence. You want to start looking at requirements and evaluation criteria, gaps and deficiencies. So what are we missing in our organization? In other words, we're not saying that, hey, we've got it, but it doesn't work. We're saying we don't even have it. And then what is it that we need? Start the development during the assessment of your testing center of excellence strategy and the implementation plan. The approach that you can use, you want to interview as many of those involved with QA and testing process as possible. So think of the stakeholders. Very important. Explain what you're doing and why. In so many of the assessments that I've done, you know, sometimes people just have a tendency to be nervous. They want to know, they want to be assured that this is not being done to determine whether or not you need to get rid of their position or role. If you give them that comfort level, believe me, they will be much more open. And then exercise diplomatic assertiveness. That's a term that I use where, you know, be friendly, but you've got to be confident. Whoever you choose or whatever team you have do your assessment, they've got to have the confidence and the knowledge and the personality where they can challenge people without offending them. Ask questions and then challenge those answers with more questions. Use a structured assessment report format. So in just a moment, I'm going to share with you an outline, a template that we use quite often, and you're going to see that the sections provided are very granular. So each section would offer very granular recommendations. So first off, I'm just going to show you what we use as a table of contents, and I'm going to go over each section in greater detail. So section 1 is a Testing Center of Excellence assessment intro. 2 is the executive summary report. And I'll let you read all of these yourself, but these are the first 7 sections, right on through a total of 13 sections. If you're superstitious, feel free to add another section or delete one. And I'm actually going to go back for a moment. So notice section 12 right there, the roadmap and the Testing Center of Excellence implementation strategy. Earlier, we were talking about where you are and where you're going to get to. That roadmap tells you how you're going to get there. These are the things that you need to do. So I'll be going over that in greater detail also. So for the introduction, should be no more than 1 page. So the assessment introduction should include the what, why, who, when, and where. Introduce what is being assessed, the purpose or objective of the assessment, focused on implementing a testing center of excellence. In other words, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this assessment to determine whether or not we want to implement a testing center of excellence and what kind of testing center of excellence? You want to make sure you have the why. The standards and guidelines that you use, if you use IEEE or CMMI or TMMI, any of those, make sure you document that. Or if you have your own internal standards and guidelines in regard to assessments. Date and setting of the assessment, you know, let people know not only when, but the setting in the sense was, did you interview everybody remotely? Because sometimes doing that can lead to a greater number of disconnects and miscommunications. Who's the assessor or assessors, and the resources involved? Who are the stakeholders? And then the format that you're going to use for the assessment. Was the format entirely on interviews? Was it a combination of actually reviewing the application and all documentation? Make sure you indicate the format. An executive summary. And it looks like my screen has paused again. I truly do apologize, everybody. Let me get this going. There we go. So everybody should see the executive summary. So the executive summary provides a detailed outline of objectives of assessment. It's an overview of the organizational challenges. Why are the objectives, why are they not being met? What are the opportunities for improvement? What are the high-level organizational recommendations? Emphasis on high level. And what are the benefits, the ROI? So these are the things that the executive leadership is going to want to see. Environment overview. So we're talking about the software testing team, applications, the different tools that are being used, prod environment, development environment. How often are they back up and restored? What kind of control does QA and the testing team have in doing backups of their test environment? Is the test environment a duplicate of prod or a subset? These are all very important questions. Section 4, the quality assurance and quality control team experience and the training that your organization has had and what they might need. So you're going to look at the testing skill and knowledge. If you're utilizing automation, and I can't imagine too many organizations not having some form of test automation, look at their skill and knowledge for that. Look at performance, functional, manual, application security testing skills, and test planning and test management. Is there truly any kind of a test plan? Is everybody on the same page in regard to sprints if you're agile? So these are all things to look at. And remember, you may not necessarily have all of the sections because you may customize or tailor it. Look at the process documentation. So look at the documentation and the standards and the best practices that you've got. What are any recommendations to improve the documentation? And the other thing that you have to look at is how easy is it for people to find the documentation they need? Yes, it's common for many organizations to have subpar documentation, but what I find even more common is that organizations have excellent documentation, but there is no easy way for the stakeholders to find it or to grab information. And then keep in mind that processes might be or include functional, performance, or application security automation. There have got to be processes when it comes to how your organization is performing test automation. Look at your production and test environment. Look at the best practices. Make sure you document that. So what is your organization doing? What should they be doing? Make the recommendations. Section 7 would be test design process evaluation. So how are you integrating automated testers, manual testers, and the business? Are your automated testers and manual testers one and the same? SDETs, software development engineers and testers, have become a very common role that we're seeing, where developers and automated testers are one and the same. The only thing I would caution with that is, remember, a great developer does not necessarily mean they're a great tester, and obviously vice versa. Identify, look at the existing test cases and test case library management. How often is that tweaked and improved and cleaned up? Many years ago, I did some consulting for an organization, and I went in there, and on one of their projects, they had right about 1,800 automated test cases. By the time I and an associate left there, they had about 780. That's because we were able to delete that many redundant and obsolete automated tests. Can you imagine the wasted development time on those automated tests, as well as the wasted maintenance time.
Oh, wow, that's really impressive.
Yeah, it was, they were very pleased with the results, and that helped them realize, Damien, just how important having some kind of a test library management process in place truly is. Look at the execution process and metrics. So take a look at what the process is, any recommendation, identify metrics that your organization is keeping, and those metrics that they should. Perhaps you want to look at the automated versus manual defect catch rate. Look at the number of successful versus non-successful test runs. I mean, there are numerous metrics. You cannot truly improve that which you cannot or do not measure. Step number 9, look at the documentation. Is it complete? Is it clear? Is it accessible? Very important. Does your organization, does the team adhere to the documentation as a whole? And again, you document your findings and your recommendations. Come up with additional metrics for the whole organization that provide meaningful information. Oftentimes metrics, I always say, they don't necessarily answer questions, but good metrics help identify when you should be asking questions. It helps you identify what you should adopt and what kind of behavior change you might need to implement, and sets accountability and standardization. Come up with standards for defect reporting and management evaluation. Identify the reporting and tracking process. Is your organization one of those that are fantastic at finding and reporting defects, but then they fall short of actually tracking them to make sure those defects that are urgent get resolved in a timely manner? What's the remediation process? How are you standardized? What about traceability? Do you have your use cases, user stories, or test cases? Can they trace back to the requirements or the acceptance criteria? How's the ability to replicate? These are common challenges many organizations have. And then you want to make sure that you come up with detailed action items to succeed. So how are we going to define success? What's our timeline and targets for our implementation strategy and our roadmap? What are our milestones, some checkpoints? Make sure you specify the need, the dependencies, the responsible resource or resources, the target dates, any potential roadblocks. So what are the risks here that might cause us to fail? And then any other critical information you can think of. And then create a summary, limit it to 1 page, identify the next steps, and then any author information. So we've gone over a lot of information. We covered the traditional versus centralized models. Hopefully I provided you a detailed enough overview of a testing center of excellence, 5 steps to build a testing center of excellence. I truly hope all of you understand the importance of an assessment, as well as the content that a good strategic detailed assessment report will have. So with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions. We have just a few minutes left. So Damien, do we have any questions?
Yeah, we have a few questions here for you. So one of the first questions I have here is, I heard you mention the 5 whys in some of your other presentations. Does that apply here when you're doing the assessment?
It does. And you know, I talk about the 5 whys in engineering quite a bit. So for the audience, we're saying why as in WHY. One of the things we try to educate our engineers on is that when you ask someone a question and they answer it, ask them, well, why is that? And then however they respond, ask them again, because sometimes it takes you asking 3 to 5 times to truly get to the truth and identify the problem. Great question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, yes, another question we have here is, what factors contribute to the enhanced delivery confidence you stated occurs as a result of creating a testing center of excellence?
Oh, great. Excellent question again. So, just some of the factors that tend to contribute to enhanced delivery confidence is that the team starts to see a much more efficient defect removal strategy. They start to see the improvement. And naturally, that ends up being seen by the end user because you end up getting fewer defects in production. You also start to identify consistent processes. So when the team understands more clearly what needs to be done, it instills them with confidence, and it also makes it much easier to identify new resources that join the team. The other thing is it always gives you confidence when you can say, hey, we've identified and we are following best testing processes and practices. So those are just some of the factors that truly contribute to an enhanced delivery confidence for those who are delivering it, as well as for those who are getting it delivered to them.
Awesome.
Any other questions, Damien?
Yeah, we got another one here. What do you consider to be the 2 biggest challenges in implementing the testing center of excellence?
The 2 biggest challenges. So, as I mentioned earlier, I've provided consulting in my many years of experience for about 260 different organizations. And I would say that buy-in from executive leadership or the organization as a whole, getting that commitment can be a real challenge. And I had mentioned that in the list, but that is definitely probably at the top. That takes some doing. It often requires some strong justification. And then the other thing, as everybody can imagine, is managing the ongoing demands, the day-to-day, keep the lights on stuff that we all still have to do. The organization, the end users, the customers, they're not going to put everything on hold just so that we can implement a testing center of excellence.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, we have a little bit more time here. So, does the survey and the assessment process ever get political?
It does. It does. That's why you want to make sure to communicate really well and always emphasize what the benefits will be, and then communicate the wins as you have them.
Yeah. So with so many organizations having gone or going agile, is there still need for testing center of excellences?
Absolutely, because I'm sure there are many in the audience who has seen organizations where even though they're agile, each agile testing team does things a little bit differently. And then if a resource pops to another one, you end up hearing say, well, that's not how that group did it, or hey, maybe you should do it this way. So it truly is beneficial to get the organization standardized as much as possible and as much as is reasonable whenever you can.
Great. Well, I think those are all the questions we might have time for here, but I just want to give another reminder that don't worry, that we will be able to do our best to answer all the questions, and we are able to email out all the answers to those who registered for the webinar today.
Yeah, and we'll do our best to get those out within the next week.
Perfect. So yeah, we'll just go into a little bit about Checkpoint Technologies. We offer software solutions used for function, performance, and application security testing, and partner with leading organizations such as Micro Focus, Tricentis, Mobile Labs, and Copaton. We also have vast expertise in Atlassian solutions such as Jira and Confluence. Our services consist of these solutions as well as areas of quality assurance and software testing. Regardless of whether you're in DevOps, Agile, or Waterfall, or even somewhere in between, we have many things to include, things such as staff augmentation, whether that be for contract to hire, or permanent positions. We also offer expert senior level consulting for initiatives such as comprehensive QA, software testing assessments, automation framework development and implementation, and many other areas. Not only this, but we also offer outsourcing, whether that be on-site, remote, or nearshore, for when you need a temporary team to assist you during peak demands. Our education is tailored in all topics around quality assurance and software testing. These services are regardless of the SDLC model your organization is using. And just a reminder, if you enjoyed today's webinar, here are several upcoming events we'd love to have you join us. We're very proud to be a sponsor of this year's Star East 2020 virtual conference. If you're attending, be sure to pop in the virtual booth and say hello. We also have 3 great webinars on our upcoming schedule, as you can see here. Be on the lookout for more detailed information in the registration link. Again, I'd like to personally thank you all for joining us today. Here's Bob and I's contact information, including our email and LinkedIn. So feel free to email us or connect with us on LinkedIn. Remember, today's webinar has been recorded, so just email us for a copy of the recording, and we'll be responding to all questions via email to those who registered for a Q&A file. Thank you and stay safe.
Thank you so much, everybody. Sorry about the technical difficulties there. All of you, as Damien said, stay safe during these crazy times, and please feel free to contact me, not only with questions, but if you want to share ideas. I mean, I love this stuff. So thank you again. Have a great day. Bye, everybody. Stay safe.